we think it's helpful to meet Costa, and he'll share with you how Costa became what it is today and how he got started in the business. I think I've shared with a few of you, his grandfather came out from Greece and started the family auto lube business. They now have 24 locations in the Northeast, and Costa did not get into that business, but certainly had a tremendous work experience with his dad getting into the business as well. And then we'll open it up for questions after that. The call is slated for 45 minutes. And so what we'll do is just do a round robin with the questions. If each of you could just ask one question, we'll move to the next person. And then if we have enough time, we'll go around again. So anyway, thank you again for joining us. Costa, are you back?
Yes.
Oh, good. Thank you.
And we just had someone join us by phone, and Chris also joined us. If anyone else comes on, I'll admit them, but I'll go ahead and kick things off. So thank you to everyone for being on this call. These have been really productive calls for us as an organization, and we think they're mutually beneficial for the participants as well. So the Q&A is really where we get some really good information from what you guys are looking for in a franchise, and ways that we can adjust our business to better serve you guys. So it's been a fun experience having these calls every week with the different people from the different parts of the country, and the diversity of ideas, opinions, and backgrounds. So I'll be real quick on my background, because we have a lot of people on here, and Q&A is the best part. I started off in finance. I have an MBA and I have a Master's of Science in Finance. I went from TD Ameritrade to Merrill Lynch to T. Rowe Price, and I had a really good job. I was invested in my career. I had several securities licenses, and I always had this side of me that was kind of itching at me to start a business and have a business. And so I started racking my brain for ideas that I thought were manager centric, but not skilled manager centric, meaning that if the manager called off, that you don't have to shut down for the day. And so that kind of eliminates a lot of food-based businesses where, you have a, pizza maker or a head chef, and it eliminates a lot of other businesses where if it's a skilled position, then you can't just pull someone up from the ranks to keep continuity. And so the oil change business is one of those businesses where you can have the store run on a limited basis by a non-manager. And so that was appealing to me. I never anticipated leaving my job. I thought it was just going to be a nice side business to scratch that entrepreneurial itch. And 6 months into having the first location in Harrisburg, I jumped into it full time because I was just having a little bit too much fun running the business. And here we are today. The second store was kind of a test in the model. I thought that, while I was sitting at my desk at T. Rowe Price, I would go through thousands of Yelp reviews back when Yelp was relevant, and just listen to what the customers were complaining about with the big players in our space. And it seemed as though there was a massive void in the space. And I think a lot of great businesses are built from filling a void in the consumer space. And so I thought the established players were not utilizing marketing in the year that it was. So back then, 2014. So the marketing of the time was Facebook dark posts. And so I was an early adopter of some of the social media technologies, which helped us catapult the second store, which was in Dillsburg, Pennsylvania, which is a town of 6,000 people. That really validated the model for me. And then the third store was in Chicago, which was extra validation. So because Chicago is about 800 miles away from where I live, I wasn't able to be there on a regular basis. And so because of that, very early on in the business, built into the DNA of this business is third-party sources, third-party applications, third-party vendors, and processes that were put in place to be able to run the business from several states away. And so we went from Chicago to Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh to Youngstown, Youngstown to Cleveland, and filled in the footprint that way. At around store number 10, I started thinking about the best way to serve operators. So we went from a consumer-facing goal to a operator-facing goal. I felt as though the current model is designed in a way that, you know, most of these large franchisees for some of the more established brands are family offices, private equity, and groups that really don't ingratiate themselves with the community. They don't do the things that I think help us be successful, like you know, sponsoring the local T-ball team, things like that. And so we, I engaged with Fran Devco, which has several people. And obviously, if you had a chance to talk to Chris or Michael or anyone on the team, you know that, you know, they're great stewards of the brand. And I couldn't ask for better partners, but they also have the franchise experience that I lacked to be able to do this the right way and have a really polished infrastructure for franchising, which in turn has led to us having a lot of success in the franchise space. So that's, you know, that's a really high level overview of what we're doing. If I, you know, stop talking right now at 10:40, that gives us a solid 20 minutes of Q&A. And the one thing I will say is we do have Discovery Day this week. If you can attend virtually, that's great. If you come in person, that's even better. But that's where we really get into the secret sauce. So I try to keep the Q&A to kind of high level macro questions as opposed to real specific stuff that is answered, you know, during that Discovery Day process. But I'll let, since we have such a large room today, I'll let Michael curate the questions, and just, if you could state what market you're in, that'll be helpful as well. And yeah, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions about the model or anything you have.
Okay, Costa, thank you. I'll just move from left to right as I see candidates on my screen. And Brett, you've come up first. If you have a
good
question.
morning. Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. A couple of things from last week that I couldn't type or write quick enough. So I'll try to be brief, and I'll hopefully see you tomorrow. Costa, average ticket price and then a high ticket price.
So Brett, good to have you on the call again. Did Michael have a chance to give you that industry document, the PDF that has that?
Yeah, that was NOLN, Brett, the document I think I sent out last Wednesday.
So to directly answer your question, it's become very fluid these days. Everyone obviously is watching the news. Our ticket average for 2021, I believe, was $69. I think for the industry, it was $78. If you have that document in front of you, you can correct me on that. But that's largely because some of the larger players started doing higher ticket items like selling tires and brakes and things like that. As full synthetic penetrates the market more and more and more, the ticket average is going to go up. And that'll impact it as well. And then obviously we're seeing such a massive acceleration in price increasing due to the inflation, especially that's impacted by the price of crude oil, which is now being impacted by what seems to be some interesting developments with the Russia-Ukraine situation, where it seems beneficial for people to believe that something's going to happen there. It's driving up the price of oil right now, which will eventually be passed down to us, which then gets passed on to the consumer. You know, if you guys were to call your local Jiffy Lube or Valvoline in your neighborhood, you'll see a lot of them have already increased their full synthetic base price to $99.99. And that is a large jump from where things were not too long ago. We're still at, well, we just had our first price increase this year. We moved our full synthetic to $79.99. And our synthetic blend is still at $39.99, whereas some of the larger players, I believe, are at, $49, and even some are at $59.99 for that synthetic blend. But from an anecdotal standpoint, you can always call up the closest quick lube and say, hey, I've got a Honda Civic. Just pick like the most generic car you can think of, and they'll give you the base price. And it'll be interesting to see what these prices look like 3 months from now.
Perfect. Thank you for answering that. One last quick question. I wrote down a couple of numbers from last week on average number of cars per day. I got confused between the single and the double bay. Can you expand on that a little bit for me?
So car count is a main KPI of this business. So we follow car count intently. All variables equal, a 2-bay obviously has a higher revenue ceiling than a 1-bay. On a fairly granular level in the beginning, that the car count can be very similar between a 1-bay and a 2-bay. We did when we launched the concept store in Menor on the Lake, we did 38 cars on the first day, and it kind of changed my view of the capacity of a single bay. And I was more confident that a single bay can handle larger car counts. But that being said, you're not going to be doing 100 car days out of a 1-bay. Like there is going to be some kind of delta where the customer experience starts tapering off if the store is too successful. The difference between doing a 1-bay and a 2-bay comes down mostly to real estate and your tolerance for rent in the early period, because the 1-bay building is a $300,000 building and the 2-bay building is a $400,000 building. And let me put an asterisk on that, because materials costs are changing on a regular basis too. But just on a macro level there, that impacts your rent by hundreds of dollars a month over the course of 15 years. It's it's a big number difference. But the single bay certainly can handle a lot more cars than I had even originally anticipated.
Okay, thank you.
Great, Brett. Thanks for your questions. Dean, I see you up next if you have a question for Costa.
Yeah, hello, thank you. I'm actually on the West Coast. I'm right outside of Sacramento. And I just had a couple quick questions. One was, I believe that there is currently not a store really on the West Coast at all. And I was just wondering, is that just geography, just it hasn't got out here early in the burn, so to speak?
Our franchise disclosure document for last year was filed in late February. We were officially allowed to sell franchises in March. We sold the first one in Houston, I believe, March 28th. So we haven't been selling franchises for a very long time. That being said, our first franchise is opening in the next few weeks in Mesa, Arizona. So I consider that West Coast because they're a 3-hour time zone. I know it's not California, Oregon, or Washington, but
no, it's for all intentional purposes, it's West Coast.
Yeah. So our first franchise location that's opening is in Mesa, Arizona. And that's going to be in the next few weeks or so. Right now we're working pretty diligently with them to find a manager, because the manager is the key position. The other positions are fairly fluid in terms of being able to, replace them, but you do want to have a solid manager especially in the beginning. Continuity in this business is important. So continuity in terms of making sure people see the same faces. So they, for people, cars are sometimes, if they don't own their home, they're the most expensive asset that they have. So we want to be really good with their property. And so having a solid manager that's there for the long run is important. So that's a really long-winded way of answering your question, that Mesa is our first franchise that will be opening. We do have a Sacramento franchisee in Elk Grove. I believe he's pretty close to signing his lease. But one of my back office guys would know that better than I would at this point. But we have a lot of traction on the West Coast because of the model just resonates pretty much with everybody. Like everybody has a Jiffy Lube story, everybody has a Valvoline story, everyone has an oil change story. Michael has had a couple bad run-ins, which has helped him kind of really be able to tell our story well, because it personally has impacted him a couple times. So, but yeah, we do have good traction on the West Coast.
Got it. And would it be, would we be able to get the address like for the Mesa, Arizona one?
Yeah, I will send that to Michael, and Michael can pass it on.
Okay, just because I travel out there for work, and you know, I'm one of those types where whatever business it might be, I probably go sit outside the, not in a stalking manner, but you know, sit outside for a couple hours.
I did the same thing. You know, I had a pitch counter from my baseball days, and I used to sit outside Quick Lubes all the time and just count the cars. Like to me, that seems like a very normal thing an entrepreneur would do.
Yeah, exactly. And then just one last question. I know with new cars lately, technology, you know, oil changes now aren't as easy as, I mean, some of the cars you, in essence, have to take it to the dealer. I know, like I have an Audi and they actually siphon that oil out. I'm just wondering, how do you see that affecting the industry with some of these cars now being only able to be taken to the dealer for the oil change? And is that honestly just getting a text that will keep up with technology? Because I'm sure anything can be learned. But I think it's one of those things where sometimes, oh, you have to have this exact tool that's an OEM tool that you can only get from Audi to be able to get a part off, or whatever the case might be.
Yeah, in terms of the oil change, well, actually, let me back up. We have right to repair laws on the books. So dealerships cannot tell you something has to be done at the dealer. And that goes for the Audis and Mercedes that require you to use topside evacuation tools. We have, as part of our franchise agreement, we require certain tools to be in the store. And one of them is an evacuation unit for those cars that don't have drain plugs. And so you can siphon the oil through the dipstick and pull it out that way. It's such a small fraction of cars. At the end of the day, no matter how technology has changed from the Model T until these newer vehicles that have lubricants, there's an oil filter, there's a plug. There's a plug somewhere on your Audi. It's just easier to siphon it. It's, you know, these so-called sealed transmissions are the same way. There's a plug somewhere, right. But it's just not accessible for a tech downstairs. So it becomes just the path of least resistance is to siphon it out. But at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're taking the oil out, you're putting new oil in, you're taking the filter off, you're putting new filter on. And although the place of the filter might change, the place of the drain plug might change, you know, at the end of the day, that's the guiding principle. We don't turn away some of the harder to do cars that, say, you know, Take 5 is pretty notorious for turning away Mini Coopers, Alfa Romeos, Jaguars, anything that they just want to throw their hands up. We don't mandate at the franchise level that you're obligated to do cars, and turning away a car isn't going to kill the business, because it's such a, you know, we want to cater to the masses. We're not going to, you know, cater to the lowest common denominator, because that's just going to make you pull your hair out.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dean. Next up is Patrick. Patrick, if you have a question for Costa.
Yes, I found my unmute button there. So I actually have two questions. My name is Patrick Bobrukowitz, thus the P Bob. So I'm sure you can get Costa with the last name there. I'm sure you can get that. You might need to shorten it to something every now and again for folks. I'm based here in the Kansas City area, right outside of the greater Kansas City area in a suburb called Liberty. I do have two questions. One, my background, I came from more kind of the data science and stuff like that as it relates to the restaurant industry. So as you say, hey, car counts or our KPIs, okay, well, traffic is in restaurants, right? Or ticket averages, a lot of very similar things. How do you envision doing, you know, more guest interactions with technology in the future, as you talk about like bay optimization and, you know, throughput? I see those kind of like Liberty marketing, tax people sitting outside, but except that they're standing out in front of a Valvoline and they're like, hey, we're dead right now. Like, wouldn't it have been cool to just like get a notification that we're a little slow on Tuesdays around 2 o'clock, Kathy, if you want to come by? How do you envision embracing technology like that in the future to drive more traffic through the smaller units?
So we've always been what I think is at the forefront of the different technologies that help with marketing. I was I was the first commercial advertiser on Waze's platform in Pennsylvania. And we were actually working pretty closely together before the Google acquisition to come up with a model where if you left the tracking running in the background, that you would get a notification to your phone like, hey, you've driven 3,000 miles, here's your closest Costa Oil. That has all been rendered useless because of the iOS 14 update, and that has made it very difficult to do more targeted type of marketing. And that being said, our business is largely a destination business. Most people wake up in the morning knowing that they need an oil change and that it's on the things to do. So when you said throughput is, that's a important factor. Bay time is an important KPI. We're tinkering with ways, we're tinkering with ways of making sure that the consumer gets educated that our model is about throughput, because the other brands are kind of going a different direction where, if you take off your lunch break in order to go get an oil change and you just happen to show up the day that one bay has a brake job and the other bay has tires going on, you might miss your entire lunch break and you're like, well, I thought the whole point of this industry was the fast oil change. So, we've really tripled down on marketing the speed of the service. We've tripled down on, selling people their time back. And there are CRMs that can do email notifications. I haven't looked into too much about what you just mentioned. I know not Supercuts, Sports Clips now has a sign that they put in their window that says no wait time, and it's pretty visible from far away. I like that idea. I think that's good, but we don't, you can see from afar if there's a car in the bay or not. So I don't know how useful something like that would be. But I think overall, at the end of the day, just people knowing that our model is designed around convenience and selling their time back, that in itself will self-fulfill without having to, ping them with some sort of marketing measure. Although we do that pretty regularly through the Facebook and Instagram ads. And that's still right now the number one place to be advertising wise. Even with the iOS 14 update, Facebook ads are still, for penny per pound, still the best way to go. Google AdWords helps, but most people's eyes have been trained to kind of disregard the people who pay to play and get their links up there first. And so, if you go to Google and search oil change in Boardman, Ohio, or oil change in Gibsonia, PA, we're usually organically the number one spot just based on our ability to do SEO and things like that. I got away from your question a little bit, but that's another long-winded answer to that.
No. It makes complete sense, and it's not like, obviously, it's not like I understand the marketing specifically in this business. I was just thinking about seeing them, the stalls sitting empty in the middle of the day, and Kathy sitting over there in her office. Is there a way to connect 1 and 2? That was one of the very end, like how you've looked at technology was really more my questioning, in which your long-winded answer actually provided more insight into how you think about technology. So that was actually very fruitful. The second question that I had was based around changes in market dynamic. So as we continue to see the electric vehicles, and I know we're years and years and years off from this, decades off from it, but as we continue to see them take more of a foothold, is there any plan to, offer some sort of services or something like that would expand the portfolio in the future?
Yeah, so nobody knows the timing of it. What I feel is that it's being accelerated pretty quickly. anybody who watched the Super Bowl, and maybe you boycotted the Super Bowl because of the Chiefs not being in it, but anyone anyone who watched the Super Bowl noticed that there was a pretty prominent placement from the major manufacturers for fully electric vehicles. And so there's 350 million registered internal combustion engines in the USA. And what our data has shown is that most people who do buy an electric vehicle keep an ICE vehicle handy because there's just no reliability around the range just yet. We don't know how the batteries are going to be recycled. I've seen some of our competitors start dressing up normal maintenance as EV maintenance, and so things like wiper blades, air filters, and tires, and then just dressing it up as EV services. But at the end of the day, the electric vehicles have very few fluids. They have very little maintenance, and so it's not something that we can really pivot to. And so for us, what I think is going to happen is someone is going to be the lasting model. And I think it's going to be us. I think our low overhead oil change only model will end up being the surviving model when this day comes, whether it's 40, 50, 100 years from now. But when you're trying to do all of the above, I think that some of our competitors are going to go through the same problems that the American restaurant industry is currently going through. What makes you pick Applebee's over Chili's over TGI Fridays when they have no brand distinction? And so if you're just another full service automotive shop that offers all of the above, like a Midas, Monroe, Meineke, what makes you pick one over the other? And then it usually comes down to pricing, and then you get into a race to the bottom on pricing, and you don't want to do that. So for us, we want to scale quickly so that we get that brand recognition, we get the consumers educated on what our model is, and then when the inventory of vehicles to service starts becoming lower, our limited overhead, our limited staffing, our limited SKUs, that'll position us in a way to either soften the blow or withstand it completely.
That makes complete sense. And it's funny that you would say the Applebee's versus Chili's versus whatever. I spent about 20 years of my career supporting Applebee's in some way. And I sat in an office one time watching a commercial, air quotes, that our marketing team made that was for TGI chili backs. And they were like, look, you can't tell us away from any of them. Here's how we're going to be different. And then they had to go into explaining how to be different. But it was, to your point there, it was mocking how you can't tell the difference between any of them.
Yeah, and that's why branding has become so important, especially in the age of Amazon, where, take any business as innocuous as you can think of, and Amazon has no qualms about getting into that business. And then when you don't want to get into a race to the bottom on pricing with Amazon, because that's an unwinnable battle. So you want to have a strong brand that people feel loyalty to. Otherwise, they'll give up and go to the place that's just going to be the cheapest.
Right. Super. Thanks, Costa. Lance, great to see you on the call. Do you have a question for Costa? I'll just wait and see if Lance is on mute. Lance, are you there?
How about now?
Oh, hi. Yeah, now we can hear you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, this is Lance Waller. I am in the Nashville, Tennessee market. And I guess
I lost it. Sorry, you cut out.
Okay. Just speak to the ability that Costa has had in terms of having continuity of staffing, especially at the manager level in this crazy post-COVID world where, everyone seems to be scrambling to find and keep employees.
Yeah, that's a great question, Lance. And we've fortunately come out the other side. Well, we don't know if this is the other side, but we've done quite well in terms of keeping our key managers at our key stores happy. And a lot of them, just from over the years of treating them right, has built up equity that has created loyalty to me and what we're trying to do. Keeping your word is so important. When you say you're going to do something and you constantly deliver on that builds a lot of equity with your employees as well. And so, some of my guys that were with me when we only had 3 or 4 locations, and I'm telling them that I want to be one of the biggest quick lubes in the country, and they're seeing what's going on now, that really does help. But also from a tactical level, from a real tactical level, when it comes to the employees, just figuring out what it is that they want in life, whether it's job security, whether it's money, whether it's home work life balance, whether it's just finding out the things that they're looking for out of a job. It's so disingenuous to buy someone a $35 or $100 Amazon gift card for their birthday or Christmas. I use my manager in North for sales, for example. He's been with me for 6 years now. I would buy him tickets to the Penguins for him and his wife twice a year. My total out of pocket cost is probably $60. He's going to remember that way more than he's going to remember a $100 Amazon gift card. And so that's from a kind of a tactical level is anecdotal example. But the other part of this is when we hire and we look for people who want to interact with people in a pleasant manner, and we don't want to put them in a position to do something that's against their own moral beliefs. So there's a lot of credibility issues in our industry from some of the other brands that have done things that put their employees in a position to either deceive or sell out of ignorance. We have an internal quote in our employee handbook that says the most educated consumer will always choose us. And so we want, for people who their car is the most expensive asset they own, we want to teach them about their car. And so we'll tell our employees hey, talk to the customer about what you see, talk to them about what's going on with their car. And for them, that's a much more pleasant experience than worrying about whether or not they're going to hit their air filter goal or their wiper blade goal or their fuel injector cleaner goal, and always constantly worrying about, are they going to be replaced or their hours going to be reduced because they're not selling. And so I think that has gone a long ways for having staff continuity, and we've had very little turnover during this period because of it. We have had to increase wages across the board. It's impossible to not have the employees find out what other people are making, and then when you bring on new staff, whether out of replacement or out of growth, and the only way to get them in the door is to start them at a wage that maybe one of your long-term employees was took them 3 years to get to. You don't have much of a choice there, but to unless it's much more expensive to replace a long-term employee. So it's better to just take the hit, give them the higher wage that they probably deserve at that point if they have been with you that long. But that's just kind of a conversation that seems to be lost during these wage hikes, is the impact on the existing employees. Everyone wants to talk about the cost of the new employees, but the existing employees are probably the higher cost of these wage talks.
Hey, Costa, sorry to interrupt. This is Dean again. Would you say that most of the managers are salaried or paid hourly?
I moved away from salaried quite a while ago. I have some guys that have been with me 5+ years that are still salaried. But our newer, when we open new stores, and we opened 5 stores in the last 2 years, they're mostly hourly, anywhere from $15 to $18 an hour.
Got it. Thank you.
Great.
I have a follow-up question to that, along that same vein, if I may.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Have you looked at sort of district general managers or something like that, where one is salaried for every 3 or 4 stores, and they're kind of in charge of growing the other GMs around them? Have you gotten into any of that yet?
We have 2 territory managers. When I first started the franchising process with Fran Devco, there's a lot of legal, work behind it that needs to be drawn up around the model and what we're trying to do and all that stuff. So I told my 2 territory managers, one for the Western PA, Eastern Ohio stores, and one for the Central PA stores. And I said, look, you need to resolve every issue at the store level. You need to make sure that nothing comes to my desk, because for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be head down working on this franchise thing. And I remember we were on a Zoom call, and I remember saying to Michael, it had been like maybe a week and a half. And I said, Michael, I haven't heard a thing from my business in a week and a half, and I see the money still coming in, and I haven't had any headaches. I haven't had any phone calls. I said, I don't know if I really need to franchise. Maybe I should just go sit on a beach somewhere and let this thing run its course. And, but obviously, that was because of those territory managers who act in an owner type position, where they are in charge of making sure the stores get open, in charge of making sure inventory gets ordered, in charge of making sure that they're doing those types of tasks that make sure that the oil deliveries are on time, things like that, stuff that I used to have my finger on.
Great. Thanks, Costa. I don't know who this is. It's just a phone number. It starts with an area code 615 and then 337-0650.
That's actually me, Lance. When I was first getting on, I was having trouble with the computer, so I had gone ahead and dialed in on the phone.
Okay, thanks, Lance. Well, I guess we've got 5 more minutes. If anyone else has another question, if Costa, if you're okay staying on, please go ahead.
Yeah, I can go a little bit longer. Unless we're done.
Let's see. Chris or Kristen, any questions on your end or comments?
Not really. We do also have a 10-pack agreement that's being signed in California, Victorville, California, then to the west, by the end of this week. So our presence is coming to the west.
Yeah, and that's down in Southern California, right, Chris? The Inland Empire, I think near Riverside.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. Or maybe, Chris, could you just share not the name, person's name, but the type of entity or person that's moving forward with 10 units?
Can I share what? Sorry.
The type of person or the entity that's investing in 10 units?
Oh yeah, this guy owns gas stations.
Okay.
And he also owns some Quiznos. So he's been in franchising for a little bit, but he's starting with 10 and hopes to have 20. He's got big goals.
Well, thank you. Congratulations. Great. Well, I think that wraps it up. Costa, unless you have any closing comments, I know Chris, Kristen, and I are working with the candidates on the call, and things continue this way. We hope to have them meet you in person and ourselves at our Discovery Day. I know that Brett is coming up to the Discovery Day tomorrow. He made a quick decision yesterday, so thank you for that, and we'll get a chance to meet him.
One thing I'll mention, it was mentioned early on in this call, the NOLN study. We have a industry magazine called National Oil and Lube News. It's like what Restaurant Week is for restaurant businesses, and and Michael can share every year they do an operator survey of thousands and thousands of quick lube owners that helps compile data for the entire industry. And so Michael or Chris have that PDF and they can share it, and it has good insight into our business and what's going on in our business.
Great. All right, Costa, we'll get that out. And I guess that's it. Thank you very much for all attending. We appreciate your interest in the brand and are excited to move forward. And hopefully we will meet you in person in the future.
All right. Thanks, Michael.
Okay. Bye. Thank you, Costa.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.